Welcome to Broad Strokes, Fortune's new show that digs into the news that matters to women every week. I'm Kristen Bellstrom.
And I'm Valentina Zaria, and here are the stories that caught our eye this week.
So Donald Trump and his son Eric made some extremely questionable comments about sexual harassment this week. So Donald went first. He was asked if Ivanka Trump, his daughter, were sexually harassed, what would you want her to do? And he said, I would hope that she would leave the company. I would hope that she would start a different career. And just in case you thought maybe he was misquoted, Eric came out the next day and essentially doubled down. He said Ivanka's a strong, powerful woman and she would never allow herself to be harassed. So where do we even start with these comments?
Yeah, I mean, this is incredibly frustrating to hear from someone who's a Republican nominee for president. It's basically victim blaming. You're basically saying other women who are in this position, they're not strong, they're not powerful because they let themselves be sexually harassed. And then also you're putting the onus on women to leave their jobs, to switch their careers, when frankly, it shouldn't be on them. It should be on the perpetrators of sexual harassment and the people that are creating the culture that make this okay.
Also, it just seems like a really privileged remark. I mean, realistically, how many women out there could just walk away from their jobs?
Another big news topic this week was Apple releasing its diversity statistics. And there's some good news there and some bad news there. The good news is that there's progress, that there are more women and more minorities at the company. The bad news is that the progress is really, really small and really slow. The number of women and minorities at the company has only increased by 1% since last year. So, I mean, for me, it's like perhaps these diversity reports aren't doing the job that we thought that they were going to do.
I think that's a completely valid criticism, but I think it's important to remember how helpful it is for us to have this data. For a long time, we had no idea what was happening in these companies. And now we have this information we can use to basically hold their feet to the fire and say, to your point, look, you only went up 1 percentage point this year. You have to do better. So the other story that I was paying a lot of attention to this week is about the former chairman of Saatchi and Saatchi, Kevin Roberts. So he gave this interview to Business Insider, very controversial. He said basically 2 things. First, he said the debate about women in advertising is over. He used a slightly more explicit term, which I'm not going to use here. But then he went on to say women in advertising lack vertical ambition, which means they don't want a C-suite position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to talk about the first comment, that the debate is over. You know, honestly, the only thing that's over at this point is Robert's career, right? He gave the interview on a Friday. By Monday, he was put on leave. By Wednesday, he has resigned. So I think that is enough to show you that this debate is not over.
I did think one interesting thing was our colleague Claire Zillman wrote a story on Fortune.com about the fact that maybe there's some truth to some of what he said. And basically, she was zeroing in on that vertical ambition point. She was saying, look, people like Sheryl Sandberg, people like our own Patty Sellers have said women view ambition differently than men. It's interesting to think that maybe he sort of had a point, but the way he phrased it, obviously not very well thought out. And just this idea that you can say women all want one thing, women all think one way, is obviously completely ridiculous.
Totally.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have this week, but join us next week for another episode of Broad Strokes on Fortune.com.